We are now on the top of Daf Nun Beis Amid Beis. Number one, the word se'es. It's going to be a complicated word. We don't know exactly where to put it. And we're talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu addressing Cain after he killed Hevel in the fourth chapter of Bereshis. And the pasuk reads as follows: Halo im teitiv se'es, v'im lo teitiv lepesach chatos roveis. And we could read this pasuk and interpret it in two different ways. We could read the word se'es as being part of the beginning of the pasuk, and therefore we read it as imtativ se'es. In other words, if you'll improve your actions and get your act together, then se'es, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will lift up your iniquity, your sin, the burden, and he'll forgive you. But we could interpret it a different way. We could say that the word se'es doesn't belong to the beginning of the pasuk in Teitiv, but rather to the end of the pasuk. It's the beginning of the end. Se'es v'im lo teitiv. Now, what does that mean? Se'es v'im lo teitiv. It means that if you do not improve your actions, then you will carry the burden of sin and you'll be punished. So that word se'es could either be going back on the beginning of the pasuk in teitiv or on the end of the pasuk in lo teitiv. Number two, mishukadim. This is a pasuk in Shmos Perek Chaf Hey, referring to the menorah, and it says uva menorah arba'a gviyim mishukadim kaftorea uprachel. And once again, we can take this word mishukadim and we can interpret it in one of two ways. We could either attach it to the beginning of the pasuk, uva menorah arba'a gviyim mishukadim. In other words, the gviyim are mishukadim, meaning mishukadim means they have certain artwork, that's engraved on them. But as far as the end of the pasuk, kaftoreh prachel, they don't have any siurim. Or alternatively, we could take the word mishukadim, attach it to the end of the pasuk kaftoreh uprachel, meaning that only the kaftorim uprachim were, as we said before, mitsuyarim. There were artworks on it, not the gevim. Now we have the word machar, and here we're learning the parsha Melchemes HaMolek in Shmos Yud Zayin. Vayomer Moshe el Yoshua b'chalach anashim v'tzeilu lachem b'Amalek machar anochi nitzav al rosh hagivah umate elokim b'yadi. We could read this word machar either as part of the beginning of the pasuk, and Moshe is telling Yoshua tzeilu lachem b'Amalek machar. Tomorrow you'll go out to battle. Vayom, as far as today is concerned, anochi nitzav al rosh hagivah, I will stand on the top of the mountain and I will be mispalel. I will pray so that you will have atzlacha. Or alternatively, we can read the word machar as part of the rest of the pasuk. So he's saying tzeilu lachem, meaning go out to battle immediately, and then machar, it's going to be a 2-day battle. Anochi nitzav al rosh hagivah lispalel. Today I don't need tefillah. You don't need my tefillah in order to succeed in the war, because tomorrow, he says, Lefitzad zeh shalasofek is ola. It comes out shemelchemes hamolek ha'isa shnei yomim, and that's the way Rashi interprets Orur. Now, when Yaakov addresses Shimon and Levi at the end of Sefer Bereshis, and he says, Ki ba'apam hargu ishu b'rtzono mikrushar arur apam ki oz. We can read the word arur in two different directions. We could read it as going back to the previous words, ubertzonam akru shar arur. What does that mean? In other words, it means that you should destroy the feet of the shar shel arur. In other words, the shar of Shechem ben Chamar, and he is amongst the Bnei Knan, about which it says Orur Knan, and therefore we can interpret it in that way, that he's trying to terminate that Orur of Shechem ben Hamor, or we could read it as part of the rest of the pasuk, Arur apam ki uz, meaning the anger of Shimon and Levi would be cursed. And finally, the last of the five is Vikam. And this is a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Lamed Aleph, Vayom Hashem el Moshe nichal shalchevim avosecha, Vikam ha'mazeh v'zana achrei Elokei nechar ha'aretz. This is Hashem addressing Moshe at the very end of his life, the end of his career. And we could read the word Vikam in two different ways. We could read it as part of the beginning of the pasuk, meaning you will pass away, and afterwards you will rise again, meaning Tchiyas HaMesim. Or we could, right, and then the next part of the pasuk is just telling me that after he passed away, the people will serve Avodah Zarah. Or alternatively, we could attach the word Vikam to the end of the pasuk, and Hashem is saying to Moshe, Incha shokevim avosecha, you will pass on, and then Vikam ha'am hazeh v'zana achrei Elokei nechar. After your tzira, then the people of Israel will make this terrible, grave, fatal error, and they will follow Avodah Zarah. Now, all this is a brisa of Isi ben Yehuda. Who is Isi ben Yehuda? Vitanya, we have another brisa. Who, this person that's called Yosef Ish Hotzel, he's also called Yosef HaBavli, he's also Isi ben Yehuda, he's also Isi ben Gur Aryeh, and he's Isi ben Gamliel, and he's also Isi ben Malala. Umashmo, what's his real, true, genuine name? Isi ben Akiva Shmo. In any event, it's clear from this brisa that Isi ben Yehuda is Yosef Ish Hotzal. And yet he only has 5 psukim about which he vacillates. And we didn't add the pasuk, which, as Rabbi Yochanan had quoted him, he had a suffix about, as to how to read the pasuk, Dvir b'toch habayis mipnima heichin l'sisan shames oron bris Hashem. So the Gemara answers, b'deraisa leka b'nevi ika. There are only 5 psukim in the Torah itself that were enumerated by Isi ben Yehuda in terms of a description, this category of a suffix. But in Nevi'im, there might be others. So, for example, this suffix that Rabbi Yochanan quotes in the name of Yosef Ish Hutzal regarding the pasuk Dvir b'toch habayis, that's a pasuk in Malachim, that's a pasuk in Tanakh. So the Gemara asks, b'deraisa leka, are there only 5 such ambiguous words in the Torah itself? But right, in the 5 books of Moses. But Ika, here's another one. The boy of Chisda says, I don't know how to read the pasuk at the end of Parshas Mishpat in Shmos Chaf Daled. It says, Vayishlach es na'arei b'nei Yisrael, vayalu olos, vayizbechu zvachim shlamim l'Hashem, parim. And the word parim is at the end of the pasuk. Is it going back just to the zvachim shlamim, or is it going back even to the Vayalu Olos? So when it says Vayishlach es nari b'nei Yisrael Vayalu Olos, it means not Parim, they brought Kvasim li Olos, and then the pasuk tells about the Shlamim, Vayizbechu Zvachim Shlam L'Hashem Parim, so they brought Kvasim li Olos and Parim l'Shlamim. Odilma, or shall we say Edi v'Edi Parim, that the word Parim at the end of the pasuk goes back not only on Shlomim immediately before it, but even back to the beginning of the pasuk of Olos. And it means that we're not going to put an asnachta, meaning a stop, a pause, in the word Olos, but we're going to read the Olos together with the Shlomim as one flow, and the word Parim goes on all of them. So Gemara answers, Rav Chizda b'Safkalei, but Isi ben Yehuda pshitla. Isi ben Yehuda did not vacillate about that question. We don't know which way he went, and whether or not the Olos were of Kvasim or of Parim, this we don't know. Now, the Mishnah that we're about to learn now continues to describe the opening between the entranceway between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim, and the entry of the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippurim into the Kodesh Kodashim. And it's all a reflection, as Rashi points out, of the Chachamim in the previous Mishnah on the previous Amud, that maintained that there were two parochos that separated between the Kodesh Kodashim and the Heichal. Achitzona hoisa prufa min adorom. So we're talking now about one of the two parochos. This is the parochas chitzona that was on the side of the heichal on the outside. And prufa means it was folded up on the southern side. And that's klape chutz. And when they folded it over, how do you keep it open? Because during Yom Kippurim, the Kohen Gadol has to have access to the Kodesh Kodashim, so there had to be an opening of the parochas, allowing him entry into the Kodesh Kodashim. So they folded it and sort of turning it over on its own fold on the south side. Now, how did the fold remain folded? So they had what's called a kereshel zav, some sort of a clasp, a tachshit, that was made of gold, and that would tie together that rounded or rolled up paroches on the southern side. And that would make sure that it would stay folded, and that would give you an opening. Pnimis, now we get to the second paroches, which was towards the Kodesh Kodashim, the inner paroches. Minat Tzafon, there too, they folded it over to open it, but on the tzafon. Basically, the Kohen Gadol would go through the outer parochas on the south side. Then he would walk that, 1 amma passageway in between the outer parochas and the inner parochas till he got to the northern section where the inner parochas had been folded open. Umahalech. So he's going now from south to north. I guess you'd say from left to right, beineim, between the two parochases, which again is 1 amma. Ad shemagia litzafon. Now he's gone this whole distance from the south to the north. He giel litzafon, and now he's ready to enter into the Kodesh Kodashim. Hofech panav l'daron, he turns towards the Aron, which is on the south side of the Kodesh Kodashim, and therefore the Rosh adds here, Kedeshia he yemino l'tzad ha'aron shemimayrav leparoches, right? So his right side is towards the Aron. Umahalech l'smolo ima paroches, he's really contiguous to the paroches, which is on his left side, achu magili or, and now he reaches the or. So again, he's going in from the left, meaning the south, turn towards the north, which means to the right, then again turn towards the left in the direction of the or. So his face is now turning towards the Aron. And the parochas now is immediately on his left. Igila Aron, now he's ready for what's called Aktoras Haktores, is no senes hamachto. He's got in his right hand the machto with coals, hot coals, and he places it down on the ground. Which ground? Bein Shnei Abad, right? There were the two poles that held on to the Aron. They were permanently attached to the Aron, which is again in the middle of the Kodesh Kodashim. And now he's going to put the Gecholim down between the Badim. Vitzavar, and now he's gonna pile up or pour the Torres on top of the Gecholim. So he's got the Ketores, if you remember, in his left hand. Again, he may have to do another chafina inside the Kodesh Kodashim. But in any event, now he is pouring the Ketores on the Gecholim, and there's going to be smoke coming up. Ismali kol habayis kula osha. Now, exactly where he places the Ketores on the Machta, that's going to be the sugya of the Gemara. But the Mishnah says Yotza on his way out of the Kodesh Kodashim, ubolo derech beis knisaso, he would go out the same way he went in, which means he didn't turn his face around, but rather he kept his face towards the south, meaning towards the Aron. He didn't want to turn around and have his back face the Aron, and therefore he would have to be walking backwards. And all that is Emas Shamayim, either because of the Aron, because of the Shechina, also perhaps that he shouldn't look around and get too much benefit from the beauty of the Kodesh Kodashim. Now he gets out and he's in the Eichal. Mispal Tefillah K'tzar V'Veis HaChitzon, and we'll try to see what that the content of that supplication was. But now he's in the Heichal. V'lo hoya marach b'tfilos, was a short tefillah, shelo lahavis es Yisrael. Everyone's waiting for him to see if he came out alive after the avodah l'fnai v'l'fnim of the Ketorah. Now the Gemara wants to analyze when the Mishnah here speaks about the two parochoses, and he enters in from the left, from the south side, and then walks through the entrance on the parochos on the right side, on the north side. Obviously, we're talking about two parochoses. And we're talking about the Aron because that's where he situates himself, Ben Abadim, for the Aktoras Aktoras. So, B'mayaskinon, Elam v'migdash Rishon, mihava parochos. In the first bais, there was only one parochos that separated between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. We have no doubt, therefore, that this Mishnah must be addressing Bais Sheni. In Bais Rishon, there was only one mechitza, that was the Amatraxin that separated the Kodesh Kodashim from the Heichal. El Migdash Sheni bi'avi Aron. Now you're going to read this Mishnah as referring to the second base of Migdash. There was no Aron. There was already Bigniza. But Sanya, we learned in a Brisa, we should Nignaz Aron. Now, this Brisa is going to enumerate all those items that were hidden together with the Aron. When the Aron was put into Gniza, then Nignaza Imo, number one. What we added here is Tzitzenes Haman. Again, perhaps we're talking about digging below the Kodesh Kodashim, some sort of subterranean chamber where they hid, number one, the Aron, would have had to have been a sizable chamber, and number two, the Tzitzenes Haman, because there's a din of Mishmeres with regard to Tzitzenes Haman. Pasuk says in Shmos Tes Zayin, Vayomer Moshe Aaron, Kach Tzitzenes Achas, V'sein Shama Melo HaOmer Man, V'anachos So Lifnei Hashem L'Mishmeres L'Dorosechem. So there's a din, a kiyum of Mishmeres L'Dorosechem with regard to the man. Utzlochis Shemen HaMishcha. We're going to derive from Psukim that even the jug, the jar that contained the Shemen HaMishcha, which Moshe Rabbeinu created in the Midbar, that was also hidden away with the Tzitzenes Haman and the Aron. Maklo Shel Aaron, the staff of Aaron. We'll read about it this Shabbos in Hashem in the Parsha, that it was parach, it was blossoming, it was placed in front of Hashem l'mishmeres. Again, we'll derive this from the Psukim, so that forevermore no one will contest against the kahuna, ushkedeu prachera, and the almonds and the blossoms, shetzomchu al mata Aaron. And not only that, what else was put into Geniza together with the Aaron was the argaz sheshigru plishtim doron lelokei Yisrael. During that period of time when the plishtim took the Aaron captive for over half a year, and they suffered tremendously as a result of their taking the Aaron. And when they finally realized they can't tolerate it anymore, when they sent back the Aaron, they wanted to send a kind of an asham, some sort of a, so to speak, a gift that would be a guilt offering. So they sent a clay zav, golden kalim, and the Tanakh describes exactly what their shapes were, because they were attacked with an attack of hemorrhoids and mice and so forth. So they created out of zav different kinds of symbols. I think it all told 10 kalim. And Tasimo Bargaz Mitzido, Vishilachtam Osovalach, and they sent all these 10 beautiful golden kalim as a gift together with the Aron. They put it into an argaz. In any event, it seems clear that the Aron was already, in Gnizo. Mignozo, the Bryce explains exactly which king of Israel put it into Gniza. Yoshio Gnozo. Now, why exactly Yoshio Melech, during the period of Yoshio, they at the end of Bayis Rishon, they put the Aron into the Gniza, because Rosh Kosuv, he saw the Tochos at the end of Sefer Dvarim, amongst the curses, it says, Yolech Hashem otzcha vesmalchicha asher takim olecha el goy asher lo yadata, that you and your king, your nation and your king, will be sent into exile to a nation that you never knew about. In other words, Yeshayahu realized that this klola in the Tocha was about to come to fruition, and the time of Tzoros and Golus was fast impending, was miscarried, it's coming close. So therefore he was afraid that the Amim, those nations in which we go into exile, would take the Aron, and perhaps we would have to take the Aron with us in exile into Bavel, for example. That's not a good idea. So Omar Gnazo, therefore he hid the Aron, Shenemar, and now we quote a pasuk in Divrei Yom, Vayomer Lalviim, Hamavinim L'chol Yisrael. These are the teachers of Yisrael. Kedoshim L'Hashem. They are sanctified to Hashem. L'sharis Lavodas Hashem. Nu es Aron HaKodesh B'Bayis Asher Bana Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. Ein Lachem Masa B'Katef Ata Ivdus Hashem L'Kech V'Samo Yisrael. So there's a charge, a mandate here that they should put the Aron in the Beis HaMikdash. That doesn't make any sense. It was already in the Beis HaMikdash. But rather, the intention is that this should be hidden. The Aron should be hidden in the Beis HaMikdash. The Amar Abu Lazar. Now, how do we know about all these other things, these other items that were likewise hidden together with the Aron? Asya, we have Gzeir Shava, which connects its Sinsedes Haman with the Aron. Shama, with regard to the Aron, it says, Asher al Aron ha'idus l'fnei ha'kaporos asher ha'idus asher yivayid l'cha Shama. In its Sinsedes Haman, it says, Kaf Sinsedes Achas v'sein Shama Melo Omer Man. And just like the Aron was Bigniza, so to the Sinsedes Haman was Bigniza together with the Aron. The Asya, now we're going to derive the Tzluchis Sheven HaMishcha from Sinsedes Haman with Gzeir Shava Doros. In Sinsedes Haman, it says, Hanachal Sol L'fnei Hashem L'Tmes Doros Sechem. In the Sheven HaMishcha, it says, Shemen Mishchas Kodesh Yelochem Li Doros Sechem. And the Asya, now we're going to derive the Makil Shel, the staff of Aaron, that was taken together with the Sinsedes Haman and with the Aron, etc., to Gniza, with the Gzeir Shav Mishmeres, and the Sinsedes Haman, it says, V'anach oso l'fnei Hashem l'mishmeres l'dor seichem v'makil shel Aaron, it says, Hoshev es mate Aaron l'fnei ha'idus l'mishmeres li'osa b'nei Meri. And just like the Sinsedes Haman was put into Gniza together with the Aron, as we derived, and that was derived from the Gzeir Shava of Shama. So too, the Makil Shel Aaron, by virtue of this Gzeir Shava Mishmeres, was taken with its Sinsedes Haman and placed B'Gniza together with the Aron. In any event, it's clear from this brisa that already at the time of the kingship of Yeshayahu HaMelech, at the end of Tkufas Bayis Rishon, the Aron was B'Gniza, so therefore by Sheni, there was no Aron in the Kodesh Kadoshim. And if our Mishnah is addressing the period of Bayis Sheni, as we saw, because the two parochos, how could it be that the Mishnah would write, he gia Aron, that the Kohen Gadol, when he goes through the second entrance, the second parochos on the northern side, he encounters the Aron. The Olam Mikdash Sheni, Gemara answers, he gia Aron, makom ha'aron. It doesn't mean that he actually encountered the Aron. The Aron was B'Gniza, but the makom. Vaktani. The Mishnah says, Nosan es hamachta lebein shnei abadim. How could he have put the machta between the two badim if there was no aron there? Ema, we have to say, ki bein shnei abadim, meaning in the airspace of the bein abadim. And the Mefarshim say that the makom of the aron is the makom where the Evan Shasia was, and the Mefarshim say, why didn't the Gemara say makom shebein abadim just like it said makom aron? Because in the case of aron, we're talking about the karka. That's where we put the machta down on the ground. That's called makom. But in the case of bein abadim, we're talking about the avir, the airspace between the badim, and you can't say makom when it's not on the ground. So therefore, it's kib bein abad. The Mishnah says tzavar es haktores al gabi gechol. Now let's try to understand exactly how he put the ketores on the gecholim. Did he pour the ketores in one spot directly on the gecholim, or did he spread it around lefazer es haketores? And Tanan Kiman the Omer Tzovra. This Mishnah, since it's used the word tzavar, not the word pizer, would reflect the brisa that we quoted, that opinion in the brisa back on Daf Mem Tes, that he would pour the ketores of his maloch hafnayim directly on one spot of the gecholim, which would mean it would take the gecholim a little bit more time to burn that concentrated volume of ketores, and in the meantime, before the smoke went up and hit the Kohen Gadol directly, he could protect himself. As opposed to the other Mandiyam who says that the ketores was spread throughout the machta, so that immediately there should be some sort of a smoke going up, for one of two reasons: either because we wanted the Kodesh Kadoshim to be filled up with Ashan, so that the Kohen Gadol would not look at the Kodesh Kadoshim, or that he shouldn't be looking at the Shechina, which could endanger the life of the Kohen Gadol. Ani Chada. We have one brisa that says Sovra, that the Kohen Gadol begins to pour the ketores pnima. Pnima means if he's standing facing the Aron, it means the Aron is called the pnim of the Kodesh Kadoshim, she chutzalo, which is further away from his body, so that he's now going to pour the ketores on the, and if you want to call it the tippy top of the machta, which is towards, again, he's standing holding the machta here, the Aron is here, and, well, I shouldn't say he's holding the machta because the machta is on the ground, but I mean to say he's holding the maloch hafnayim of ketores here, and he's going to pour the ketores, according to this man, the Omar, on the front part of the machta, where the gecholim are, towards the Kodesh Kadoshim, towards the Aron. And then gradually, he's going to move his hands towards him and and then do the shvich of the ketores on his side. The other opinion in another brayse is Sovra Chutza. He starts in the area that's far away from the Kodesh Kadoshim, meaning from the Aron, that's closer to himself, Shipnima low. And then he moves his hands towards the Aron, towards the tippy end of the machta with the gecholim on it. And Omar Abai says, Tanoihi, you're right that there's a contradiction between these two brises, but it's machlokas Tanoim. And there's those who say that he should begin to pour the ketores from the Rosh HaMachta, that's towards the base yad of the machta, and then there's those who say he should do the tzvius haketores in the opposite direction. Omar Abai mistavrikim on the Omar Pnima. There's a certain compelling logic that tips the scale in favor of the opinion that he begins to pour Pnima, meaning towards the Kodesh Kadoshim Shichutala, which is farther away from him, towards the tippy end, the Rosh HaMachta on the tzad of the Pnim of the Kodesh Kadoshim, the Aron, this nan, because we have a Mishnah regarding the Torahs in Masechet Tamid, and this is a Mishnah that describes the daily Torahs. Melamdin also, we should teach and train the Kohen who's being mocked to the Torahs, and we should point to him. He's Zoyer Shalot Taschil. We're now on Daf Nun Gimel. Shalot Taschil miponecha. You shouldn't begin to pour the Ketores on the Gecholim in the Machta miponecha, meaning on the side that's closer to your body. That's not where you should start. Shema Tichve. Because what could happen is you might burn yourself, because what are you going to do now? You're going to stretch from within towards the Aron, and your elbows will be scorched by the fire, the flame that's shooting up, and the ush and the smoke that's coming up from the Ketores, because you already put the Ketores here. Better that you stretch yourself towards the outer, the outer part of the machta, meaning the tippy end of the machta, which is towards the away from the goof of the Kohen towards the Aron, and then move in so you're protected. And since that's the way they did it the rest of the year, Abai insists it's logical to assume that's the way they did it on Yom Kippurim as well, that he should begin the shvicha, the Ketores on the Gecholim, on the tzad pnim shel kodesh kadoshim, not on the tzad gufa. And this leads us to Taner Rabbanon on the top of Daf Nun Gimel Amud Aleph. So take this opportunity to which you agreed to.